Hello, thank you to everyone who's just joined us. We are about to start the next Hydrogen Bytes session. We're at 28 past, so I'm going to give it a couple of minutes just to let everyone join us. You can see we have Mark Ridley here, who's primed and ready to share some good thoughts with us. But we'll wait till we reach the half hour, and then we'll get going. Thank you everyone who's placed their time to come and join us today. I think for those who are unfamiliar with the setup, we've set this up as a particular type of Teams meeting that accommodates a lot of people. So you'll all automatically have your camera and your microphone turned off. But there is space for you to ask questions. And we encourage you to use the Q&A function, which you should see at the top of your screen. So you can submit questions during Mark's presentation, and we will leave some time. Do you know what that is, Johnny? It says Teams Maestro. It looks like maybe it's someone else's AI tool. Yes, I can let them in. Yeah, so I'll just repeat myself. Sorry for those who've just heard me say all of this, but welcome everyone who's joining for today's Hydrogen Bytes session. We'll kick off very shortly, just giving everyone the time to join, and we will start proceedings once we reach 12:30. Mark is ready to go, and as I say, your cameras and your microphones are automatically switched off because there's so many people in the meeting. So just to help us with our bandwidth and make sure everything runs smoothly. You will be able to submit questions. Please use the Q&A function when you can do that throughout the presentation. We'll try to cover as many questions as we can during this half-hour session. And then there'll be opportunities, I'm sure, to engage with Mark afterwards. So we've just reached the half-hour point. So my name is Emma Guthrie. I'm the CEO of the Hydrogen Energy Association. I'm really pleased to be welcoming Mark Ridley from Briggs Equipment, who's going to be leading our Hydrogen Bytes session today. And I will quickly share my screen first, Mark, and then we'll move to yours. We'll move seamlessly here, as if everything is absolutely fine. So my very quick introduction to all of you. Thank you for joining, everybody. As I say, I'm here representing the Hydrogen Energy Association. We are hosting today's Hydrogen Bytes. I think many of you will hopefully know about the HEA. If you don't, just a very short introduction. We've been representing the hydrogen sector in the UK for now 20 years. We currently have around 100 members which span the hydrogen supply chain, including those involved in industrial side, in the supply chain, in engineering and other related services, and those in the academic sector. If you are interested to find out more about the HEA, you can reach out to me, have a look at our website. You can find me on LinkedIn, and yeah, very happy to discuss. But with that, I'm going to unshare my screen, and I'm going to invite Mark to share his. Just check that all works well, Mark. Thank you so much. And I will switch off my camera. I'm going to hand over to Mark because he's going to be leading on proceedings for the next half hour. Any questions, as mentioned, please use the Q&A function, and I'll come back to help support the Q&A once Mark finishes. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for the introduction, Emma. So as Emma says, I'm Mark Ridley. I'm the Sustainable Solutions Manager here at Briggs Equipment. For those of you that don't know Briggs Equipment, I'll just give you a brief introduction to the business, who we are, what we do, why we're looking at hydrogen, what we have to offer, as well as the challenges we also that comes with it. So Briggs Equipment are part of the Salmons family, which are an American-based business. They have over 6,500 employees and they operate over 4 countries. We have the Salmons have a turnover of £7 billion, and they look after 131 billion in assets. So we're part of a bigger picture in the US. Briggs Equipment fall into the equipment sector of Salmons. So the Briggs Group, which we're part of, are the Briggs Specialist Services, Briggs Specialist Rental, and Briggs Material Handling, which Briggs Equipment fall into. So this is a bit of a makeup of the Briggs businesses within the Briggs group in the UK and Ireland. So as you can see, we have lots of businesses across the UK and Ireland. We have national coverage, over 700 mobile engineers. We manage 50,000 assets, and we're the largest independent provider of industrial contract rental. This is a brief slide just to show our coverage of our engineers. So as I say, we have over 700 engineers looking after the UK and Ireland, predominantly on material handling assets. We have an average response time of around about under 3 hours, and we have a 24/7 cover, 365 days a week. In fact, the only day we actually closed was the Queen's funeral. Sorry. Apologies, that went a bit quick. So we put together a sustainability event. Around about this time last year, we invited all of our customers, suppliers and partners, including the HEA, to come as part of our sustainability event. We spoke openly about sustainability, the challenges that we have, and everything around sustainability. And this is a little video we put together.
So I think sustainability will be the biggest growth factor within our market in the future coming years. I think it will play a key impact in both the buying decision as well as the environmental aspects.
It's got to be important. We need to carry on and on and on. We need to grow. We need to make sure that it's sustainable for the work, for what's going to happen in the world.
Well, so far, the sustainability event here today is it's bringing a lot of people together.
For us to be here with other partners that are kind of everybody's on the same page, all looking at sustainability, so we haven't got to have that kind of initial discussion of trying to get people over that hurdle of sustainability is the right thing to do. Everyone's already kind of on board with that here, so it means that we can have that next stage of conversation with those customers. I mean, Briggs have got the kind of the knowledge and the network that takes us into places that we would never get to on our own.
We work well together. There's a good synergy from the point of view of discussing, designing and making sure that it's the right solution for a customer, not what just we sell. We make sure we get the right thing, the right part, the right solution.
So for me, Briggs, they're the most customer focused dealer out there for forklift trucks, material handling equipment, and also the other equipment such as cleaner machines. And that's what really stands out to me, is the customer focus. They care about the customers. It's not just about selling trucks, it's about having that cooperation with the customer and the future business as well.
So as you can see, Briggs have an ESG strategy framework, which is on screen now. So as part of that, it helps us work through our own ESG, and it also meets our core values, which are at the top there. And you'll see these throughout the slides. As part of our ESG, we also work with customers and their own ESG. So part of my role is to look after the E and the G in ESG, and we do that with our customers by delivering sustainable solutions to our customers. So this vertical here, they're growing our business sustainably. We look at how we can offer our customers sustainable solutions to meet their own ESG goals. And we do this through the sustainable solutions role. So part of the sustainable solutions role, we look after alternative fuels, new products, infrastructure, partners and suppliers, innovation, and where appropriate, funding. When we look at alternative fuels in the material handling industry, we look at HVO, electrification, biodiesel and hydrogen. They all come with their own issues and they all come with their own advantages. So you can see I've listed a couple below there. I'm not going to read through every single one because I know we are slightly pushed for time. But as a short-term fix, we tend to find that customers move to HVO or electrification. Electrification in our industry is relatively straightforward. It's something we do regularly. You know, we've had electric fork trucks for many, many years. The battery technology's moved on significantly. So we've got lithium and lead acid fast charge batteries now. but these projects are often hampered by grid capacity. When we're looking at hydrogen, we do consider hydrogen the fuel of the future, although it still needs some significant work regarding infrastructure. So as a material handling dealer, we're a HEA yield dealer. So we are the HEA yield dealer for the UK and Ireland. And this shows HEA yield's offering across that market now. So when we look at the warehouse equipment, we can see that it's available in lithium ion, lead acid and hydrogen. The counterbalance is lithium ion, lead acid, LPG, diesel and hydrogen. And then as we move up to the bigger trucks, we see it's lithium ion, diesel and hydrogen. So HEA Yield also own a company called Navera. So all the big trucks that HEA Yield have, so we class the big trucks as the kind of equipment you would see on ports and terminals. And they have an integrated hydrogen fuel cell in these machines. When we move down the scale to the counterbalance or the 80-volt machines, or the warehouse, the 24 and 48-volt machines, we have a retrofit option for hydrogen. So we work with Intelligent Energy on these machines with a retrofit, which I'll touch on in a second. We also offer complementary solutions and infrastructure support. So this is what makes Briggs slightly different to our competitors. We don't just sell the machine, we also sell the infrastructure and the support around that machine. So as you can see there, we work with the Hydrogen Energy Association. We've been members of the Hydrogen Energy Association now for coming up for 3 years, actually coming up for 4 years, I believe. We're involved with a lot of the legislation recommendations and white paper writing with that the HEA do. We also, part of what we're doing where we started this, the hydrogen journey, is we looked at supply of hydrogen. So we found that most of the projects in the past have failed or not been as successful due to the supply of hydrogen. So one of the first things we did was went out and found a supply of hydrogen, green electrolytic hydrogen that we can offer to our customers. We also work with companies regarding hydrogen power generation. So as you've seen earlier on those slides, we're heavily involved in the events industry, especially in Ireland. So that's something we're also looking at as well. And a lot of customers want to create their own hydrogen. So we've looked at scalable electrolyzer systems that we can offer customers. And then most of our customers who run diesel fleets or LPG fleets would have refueling infrastructure. So hydrogen again would need all new refueling infrastructure. So we've sourced two businesses that we work with around refueling systems for hydrogen. So we can really offer a full turnkey hydrogen solution to our customers. A couple of the strategic projects that Briggs are involved with. I mentioned earlier we work with HEA Yield, so we collaborate with HEA Yield on the learner program. So what the learner program is they are developing the machines with the customers on site, and Briggs support that with their engineer base and also the infrastructure and refueling side and fuel should they need it. Again, I've mentioned Intelligent Energy. So we partnered with Intelligent Energy on our retrofit fuel cells. So a 24-volt fuel cell in action now in Loughborough. We have a 48-volt fuel cell that's ready to go, and we're currently developing the 80-volt fuel cell for that mid-range machine. We also work with Hygen and Rise. So we are part of the Bradford Lighter Than Air Hydrogen Valley project. There's a €20 million funding which is being made available to convert normal HEA machines or yield machines to operate on hydrogen for Briggs customers. So the idea is it'll be the fuel will come from the HAR1 funded electrolyzer in Bradford. Hygen will supply the fuel, Rise will supply the fuel infrastructure, IE will supply the fuel cell, and Briggs equipment will supply the actual machines. And we have something similar up in Scotland with the Thistle project. So we have a letter of intent with the Thistle project. We support that project. It's around about €9 million incentives, and it's they're using smaller scale electrolyzers, multiple smaller scale electrolyzers in that project. It's also supported by one of our biggest customers in Scotland, who's ASCO. And then finally on there, we've got the IMHX. So the IMHX is one of the biggest trade shows for the material handling industry. That's held in NEC every 2 or 3 years. So Briggs will be at that this year alongside Intelligent Energy, and we will showcase the journey from creating hydrogen, refueling infrastructure, the fuel cells, and then its use in the material handling industry. So we're really putting ourselves across all those projects that we know we can get involved with and we know we can add something to as a business. So this is not our first venture into hydrogen. We've previously been involved in a hydrogen project around about 10 years ago now. So we worked with Honda UK Manufacturing and their plant in Swindon. It's since closed. So the objective was to supply two 2.5 ton to 3 ton machines and utilising 80-volt fuel cell to run on hydrogen. And we actually ended up putting some low-level order picker machines in there as well, which also ran on a 24-volt fuel cell system. So as part of that, we had to identify a supplier for hydrogen fuel cells for fork trucks, which back 10 years ago wasn't quite as common as it is now. We also had to conduct electromagnetic testing on all the equipment to make sure it was safe. We had to understand the systems comprehensively because it was all new technology for our engineers. So there was a lot of retraining our engineers involved in that as well. We've done a lot of collecting of real-time data as part of that project, which gives us a good idea of power consumptions, which I'll show you in a second. And we really just had to enhance the skills of our operators and change that mindset from using the normal machines that they were to now using hydrogen. So this here shows a little cost comparison in using lead acid to fuel cell. This is 10 years ago. So when we looked at the cost of a normal lead acid battery 10 years ago, it was around about £3,500 compared to a retrofit fuel cell, which was around about £22,000. Hydrogen was around about £10 a kilo back then, which I think a lot of people would be happy if it was £10 a kilo now. But so when we looked at it, really, to recharge a lead acid battery to 100% and run it for around about 9 hours, it cost around about £3.57, where the fuel cell was running for around about 4.5 hours and costing us around about £15. So back then it wasn't really economical. And I think the key findings from that was the lack of hydrogen. So infrastructure issues, the lack of hydrogen meant that we didn't have fuel running through the cells constantly, which meant we had to manually intervene with the cells. We had to recharge the batteries within the cells quite often, so it didn't drop below that state of charge that the lithium battery has to drop to. The electrolyzer we found was down for long periods of time for maintenance, which again hindered the supply of hydrogen. We didn't have a great deal of support in the UK for the fuel cell at the time because there wasn't a lot of businesses doing fuel cells for fork trucks at that time. And whilst we believed back then that hydrogen was still the fuel of the future, as we do today, it just wasn't very economically viable. And we said back in 2014 that it would take substantial government subsidies to get this, to get the hydrogen market going in the UK. Which leads us quite nicely to the issues that we still have today. So the challenges in the material handling industry today when transitioning to hydrogen, which is easy for me to say, is infrastructure. Ultimately, it comes down to infrastructure. We still have challenges around infrastructure. We still have challenges around readily available hydrogen that is suitable to go in fuel cells, which they say should be around about 98.8% pure hydrogen. We are seeing a lot of refueling stations popping up around the UK, and that is growing. But we believe that the best way for a customer to use hydrogen is to create their own hydrogen. So again, although we've put a lot of the work in the background for the support side, there still needs to be a lot of funding made available. So the funding streams in the UK, and I've said this lots of times in HEA meetings as well, funding seems to be all geared around creating hydrogen and not so much around using hydrogen. And if we want to grow the hydrogen market, we need to look for subsidies to transition to using hydrogen machines from, our standard fossil fuel machines that we've used for many years now. And it is a change of mindset as well. We have to make the electrification side work before we start to look at the hydrogen side. And Briggs are very good at the electrification side, so that transition to hydrogen, if the funds are available, should be relatively simple. When we're transitioning from an electric machine and we put a retrofit hydrogen fuel cell in that machine, we have to meet a lot of legislation for that machine. So the EN 1175 safety of industrial trucks states that we have to electromagnetically test that machine. So again, that adds more cost to the cost of the actual machine. We also have to change things like the operator's handbook. So at this moment in time, a operator's handbook would show you how to charge that machine with an electric charger, where we're going to be refueling it. So we have to change all that literature as well. Again, adding extra costs. But we only have to do this once. So we have to do this for each model. And the costs have changed. They've come down quite a lot for this. So they were around about £20,000. We're now looking closer to £9,000, which if you've got 10 of the same models is great. If you've got 10 different models is quite expensive. We're finding now that because the trucks are hydrogen and we've got hydrogen in them, they now fall under the ADR regulations when we're transporting these. ADR regulations haven't really kept up, and most regulations haven't really kept up with the technology. So again, we need to look at these regulations and make this transition easier for off-takers. And I think the final thing really is public perception. So, we quite often speak to customers, and you speak about hydrogen and instantly their minds will go to, exploding blimps and bombs and disaster, where realistically hydrogen isn't that. And I think as HEA members, I think it kind of falls on us now to get that public perception changed, really. And that's pretty much what Briggs equipment are doing. I realise I've kind of whizzed through that a little bit. There is a QR code on screen now. So if you do want to discuss a little bit further with Briggs, or you have something to speak about with Briggs other than the Q&A session that follows, we're more than happy to speak to you if you want to scan that code. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. That's a really excellent presentation. I think, as you say, the perspective of someone that's really at the end user part and has that ability to compare around different alternative options, not just hydrogen, and see that as that landscape and that comparison. I think it's really valuable. So really, thank you so much for this. There's a couple of questions in the chat, but I'll maybe just kick off just to ask you to expand a little bit on which of the key industries, when you look at your customer base, where do you see the greatest interest coming for hydrogen in particular?
Yeah, so at this moment in time, we're probably we speak to more ports and terminals than any industry, but we do have a lot of people in the food industry as well that are also interested. So one particular customer that we've recently spoke to, they're not just looking at their material handling equipment, they're looking at their whole operation. So how they heat their factories, how they heat their ovens, they're really looking at hydrogen. And also the brick and block industry for the same reason. So we tend to find that they tend to be businesses that are high power consumption, whether it be gas, electric, or whatever. And they're the ones that really want to look into hydrogen at the moment.
I think that's great. It's really interesting because I think we're aware when you look at sort of the power consumption, the opportunity for hydrogen, that there is a move towards that area. But I guess once they have the hydrogen concept in their mind, they can then extend to their other operational parts of their business. So, that's a great question, or a great answer. Thank you for that. Someone else has asked a bit about this. I'll maybe expand a bit. Someone, Jorn, Bernheroth. So apologies, John, if I've not correctly pronounced your name, but you've asked a question around hydrogen for combustion engines, and maybe I wanted to draw that out a little more, Mark, from your perspective. You talk a lot about fuel cells and collaboration with fuel cell suppliers. How do you see that comparison between hydrogen for fuel cells, hydrogen for combustion, and maybe advantages on either side?
Yeah, so it's quite multifaceted actually. So first off, when we look at hydrogen engines and we look at fuel cells, the efficiency gains in a hydrogen fuel cell are a lot higher than they are in an engine, perhaps because what they find, they have to inject the fuel at a lower pressure, which to create that non-carbon burn, or to get less carbon from the burn. So efficiency is probably one of the key points. And then for ourselves, because we're looking at a retrofit option, a fuel engine wouldn't work, a hydrogen engine wouldn't work, because that would be an integrated option. Now, I know JCB's gone down the route of the engine side, but the reason they did that was because the vibration, the heavy dust environment wasn't suitable for fuel cells. So we're quite the opposite. We can use fuel cells. We know the fuel cells work. We've got them out there working. So Hyster-Yale currently have that machine that I showed you on the first slide is in the port of Valencia at the moment and the port of LA, and it's working now that they've have a good supply of hydrogen, which they didn't when they started, which again, back to the infrastructure issues. So we really look at the fuel cell because we find it's easier to use as a retrofit option, and we also find it more efficient.
Yeah, no, I think great answer. And it says to me that, as you say, it's a difference between how you retrofit a vehicle, but also the operating environment in which those vehicles are working. So yeah, clearly you can see the different options for different circumstances. So thanks for that. I've had a question from Gus Badran, who's asked about how you look at the sort of the life cycle costs, I guess. So if you were looking at electric versus hydrogen, I guess across the whole life cycle, about purchasing equipment, maintenance, cost of hydrogen. You've alluded a bit to that in your slides, but anything you can expand upon on that?
Yeah, so we generally a machine, the mid-range or the smaller, the warehouse machines from Briggs Equipment, they would generally go out on a rental as our normal model. We do offer a purchase options and some other options, but we generally put them out on rental. That's normally over 5 years for that machine. The fuel cell's life is round about 10 years, so potentially you could have two machines for that one fuel cell. Where a battery, depending on the battery technology, we could be looking at two batteries over that 5-year cycle, depending on the use, the application, and how it's set up. So from a TCO point of view, we would do that calculation first anyway. So based on the actual equipment, the power source, the length of the contract, the hours the machine's doing as well, it's all variant on the application.
Understand, but it sounds like you have all the information to do that analysis.
So we can do that. Yeah, we have a total cost of ownership calculation that we can do. We can give you it for diesel, LPG, HVO, hydrogen. However we want to look at it.
Yeah, that's great. I was interested when you were just saying about the 10-year lifespan. Is that a sort of theoretical, or is that from the manufacturer? Is that something, I think you've talked about your experience over a number of years. Is that the reality of what you've seen?
So the intelligent energy fuel cell has a 10-year span. The actual cell itself has a 10-year life. So it has the fuel cell is, we remove the battery box from the truck. We put another battery box in, which has a small fuel cell, a small lithium battery in a tank, and lots of ballast because it's not as heavy as a battery. And then we can, after that truck's ran for 5 years, because one of the things you have to bear in mind, which we didn't really look at until the Honda project, is an electric fork truck is designed to do around about 8 hours a day between charges. So if you're increasing that and run it 24 hours a day, that also increases the maintenance. It increases all the other wear and parts as well. So the fork truck would still be around about 5 years, but that fuel cell could last probably 10 years.
I see. It's not the rate limiting step in terms of that timing, it sounds like.
Yes. And again, it's all application driven as well. If you're putting it into a harsh application, then those times are likely to change.
Yeah, understand. I have a couple more questions just before we close. So Frederick Senny from Air Products has said, is the availability of hydrogen preventing customers from going to fuel cells, or is it cost? So what's limiting, let's say, the uptake from your perspective?
So there's a couple of things really. So the knowledge and knowing that they can do it is one thing. So a lot of manufacturers of material handling equipment will, they have so many battery trucks to sell, so many diesel trucks to sell, so they won't talk about hydrogen unless the customers ask for it. So there's that knowing it's available part first off. Then secondly, the cost is, as I said, the cost is probably one of the biggest hurdles at the moment. We know the machinery is available, we can supply the machinery, it's those additional costs. So if you were starting a new business tomorrow and you had to have those infrastructure costs of putting an LPG tank in or a fuel tank in and that kind of thing, then it's quite straightforward. You're going to choose hydrogen because you've still got those infrastructure costs anyway. So majority of our customers aren't new customers that's just started up yesterday. They are existing customers or big blue chip customers that's been around for many years. So that infrastructure cost as well. But as we look to move to electrification, it starts to bring that price point closer of, well, actually we need extra grid capacity to be able to do this. So why don't we look at alternative fuels like hydrogen, where, we're going to still have those infrastructure costs, but we're future-proofing our business as well.
Yeah.
So I would say cost is probably the biggest hurdle at the moment, and it's that infrastructure side. We know we can get hydrogen. We know that there's going to be a lot more hydrogen coming online.
Yeah.
And whilst that hydrogen is subsidized, then, it's those incentives are there. It's getting funding for that actual transition is the biggest part.
Understand. I'm really interested in the fact you mentioned about grid connections as well, and I think that does seem to be something that appears quite a lot in the mindset of electrification and some of the challenges around that. So also a great point. We're right at the end. I have one final question from Jordan Cullen. He said, typically, how much hydrogen is stored on the fuel cell variants, and is this at 350 bar?
Yes, it's 350 bar. It's down to 200 bar on the 24 volt and 48 volt systems. They store, the smaller machines store around about anywhere from 1 to 2 kilos of hydrogen, and the large machines store 38 kilos of hydrogen.
Perfect answer. That's great. I know, Gus, you had one more question around cost of hydrogen versus other fuels. I think this could be a long discussion, and I know Mark's put some information on the slides already about that. So I'm maybe going to suggest Gus to connect with Mark via the QR code, or if we need to connect you directly, we can do that as well, given the time. But Mark, I'd really like us to wrap up to thank you so much. It's been a great presentation. Clearly had some good engagement through the questions. So I think we could talk for a long time, I think is what I see. But just for everyone's benefit, we will make this session available on demand. It will be posted on the HEA website, and we're going to send your contact names directly to Mark, so you can continue that conversation as per the terms in the registration. So thanks again, everybody. Thank you so much, Mark, and I really appreciate your time today. Cheers.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.